When they invented the railway, I'm told, they worried that travelling faster than 30 miles an hour would make your brain melt and your eyes pop out. But breezing up from London to York on a 125 makes you jolly glad those early pioneers ignored the health and safety brigade. Since leaving the metropolis, I've hardly had time to read the Daily Mail and scoff a Scotch egg.
Bikes and cars are fine, but they require a certain responsibility. You have to drive them. What I love about trains is not just their size and their grandeur, but usually somebody else is driving it for you. And occasionally, like here at York, you get a wonderful station as well.
200 years ago, we Brits invented the locomotive, and so, naturally, trains occupy a special place in our hearts. We grew up wanting to drive Thomas the Tank Engine, and to climb aboard with Jenny Agutter in the Railway Children. And for those of us who love steam trains, York is a puffing mecca. It has the largest railway museum in the world.
There are over 100 locomotives in here, including a copy of the world's first passenger train, Stephenson's Rocket. But today, I'm interested in speed. This is Mallard, the world's fastest steam locomotive ever. And that's official. It says so on the side.
Mallard set the record back in 1938 when she reached 126 miles an hour, which for the time was mind-bendingly fast. It was the high point in the age of steam locomotion. The record is likely never to be beaten, and Mallard is still revered today by railway engineers as one of the greatest trains ever built. To tell me why, I'm meeting the railway historian Richard Gibbon.
Why don't you sit in the driving seat?
Oh, lovely. How do you drive this thing?
Well, this is the only one that matters. This is the throttle. This is what makes you go. So
stop.
you pull that right out
to go fast.
Up in that quadrant to go faster, and you shut it down to stop. We've got a brake here. This is the steam brake, vacuum brake there, and we've got the gears here.
Gears? I didn't know they had gears on steam trains.
Not gears as in first, second, third, and fourth. It's more like an automatic transmission. So when you start in bottom gear, and then gradually, you see this pointer here, gradually as you go faster and faster, you turn the handle half a turn at a time, and as the engine goes faster and faster, you come up to the midpoint here. So when Mallard was doing its 125 miles an hour, it would be in this region.
It was us Brits again some 300 years ago who first thought of turning steam into movement. Easy really. Light a fire, boil some water, the steam goes through a valve, pressure builds, forcing a piston to move up and down. Connect the piston via a coupling rod to some wheels and hey presto, you've got a kettle that moves. But building a non-stop intercity high-speed kettle like the Mallard poses its own special problems. First of all, it needs lots of water, and you don't want to keep stopping to fill her up.
And the fireman's job is to keep the water level here. Now, the tender holds 5,000 gallons of water, but they'd use that in 120 miles. So on a 400-mile trip, you needed to refill with water.
How could you refill water on a non-stop journey?
Well, there is a magic thing called a scoop under this tender, and at 100 miles an hour, you lower the scoop.
You're talking about an open trough of water by the rail.
An open trough, dead level between the tracks. What you had to do was to look at how full the tender was and drop the scoop at the right place in the trough. If you dropped your scoop at the beginning of the trough, what happened is that you took 6,000 gallons of water when there was only room for 3.
I see.
And it went back over the train and in through the ventilators and doors and windows.
And they loved that in first class, didn't they?
Absolutely. That's why the first class was never next to the locomotive.
The other problem when you're trying to reach 126 miles an hour is aerodynamics. Before Mallard, trains didn't go that fast, so railway engineers didn't worry much about aerodynamics. In fact, they'd probably never heard of them. But Sir Nigel Gresley, the designer of Mallard, needed to do everything he could to increase speed, and he found inspiration in art. This was the age of Art Deco. It was Fred Astaire and the Empire State Building and ocean liners. It was sleek lines and sexy, elegant curves. Mallard was an Art Deco train. To find out just how much difference this made, I've roped in my trusty accomplice, engineering expert Claire Barrett. Having blagged our way into Cambridge University's engineering department, we've come to the Aeronautical Research Lab to have a go with their wind machines.
Look at this, Rory.
Nice models, eh?
My gothic train
Black,
set.
I know, yeah.
For my dodgy teenage past.
This year's colour for model trains,
Oh,
black.
yes. Green is so lost.
It's a shame because the Flying Scotsman, which I believe that is, would have been green and yellow, wouldn't it, in the LNER livery, and the Mallard, Bugatti blue.
But we're going to have a look at the actual science bit, Rory, rather than get distracted by the train sets. The Flying Scotsman, to me, it looks like a steam train, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, it's got the chimney at the front, it's got the steam dome, it's got all its bits and pieces and cogs and connecting rods. And
It's because the boiler is naked, isn't it? And in this one, the boiler is covered with this sort of piece of metal casing, which is nice and streamlined.
And how fast did the Mallard end up going?
I think, I don't know exactly, 125.8 miles an hour.
Roughly?
Roughly. Fastest steam train ever, a record unbroken to this day.
Right, just stick it in the tunnel and see
Stick it in
what
the tunnel, yeah.
the smoke does to it.
Not much difference at the front, but at the back and sides
At
it's
the
much
back,
more turbulent.
You can really see it, can't you? And it's the turbulence that's showing that it's got more wind resistance. And the Mallard is pretty straight, really. My money's on the Mallard
It
in a
speaks for
racing
itself,
situation.
doesn't it? It speaks for itself. It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can leave this and come back in a few hours and see who's won.
Okay.
Mallard's record-breaking run was a matter of intense national pride. It was 1938, remember, the year before we declared war on Germany. Relations with the Bosch were a bit tetchy, not least because the Hun had established a new world record with a train called, rather amusingly, the Flying Hamburger. This high-speed hamburger had managed to hit 124 miles an hour, and Sir Nigel Gresley was absolutely determined to beat it.
Now, on the day, that great day when it broke the record, who was driving?
Driver Joe Duddington
Joe Duddington.
and his fireman Tommy Bray.
Were they a team?
They were a team, they were some team.
Do we know anything about Joe Duddington, what sort of character he was?
He was the type of man who would have willingly died going fast on a steam locomotive.
Right. So
And that's not recorded, that's my opinion.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
turned his cap back to front.
For aerodynamics.
Well, because he was a hellraiser and
right.
he'd just go for it. And he wasn't frightened of what was ahead of him.
He certainly set a trend for wearing caps the wrong way around, hasn't he? Yeah.
They weren't supposed to be doing it. They pretended they were going to do a brake test. So all the guys who were on the train thought they were up for a brake test.
Great.
And in fact, they were up for a speed record.
So
Only the
26
driver,
miles an hour.
fireman,
These
and
brakes
the
aren't any
boss.
good, are they? They've got no speedometer in here, so when they were doing the trial, how did they know how fast they were going?
Well, the driver and fireman knew from the sound of the rail joints, the diddly-dum, 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 they knew what speed they were doing.
Not diddly-dee?
Not diddly-dee, diddly-dum.
Diddly-dum. Oh, I see. Diddly-dee must have been later.
At 11:46 on the morning of July the 3rd, 1938, Mallard left London. It made its way north to Barkston, then it turned round and sped back like a bat out of hell, faster than any train had ever gone before. Over a quarter of a mile, Mallard topped 126 miles an hour. It was a new world record, and it looks like it'll never be beaten.
Mallard shot into the history books going downhill with a strong wind behind her and a madman at the wheel. But surely the genius of this locomotive is its aerodynamic shape.
From something big, curvaceous and blue to big, curvaceous and red.